What's going on, Riverside? It's Mr. Bajoric here. Today we're going to do some awesome text. So basically, we're going to make this Riverside Ravens looking like sticker over this crazy background. Pretty fun and easy to do. In order to get this done, there's going to be 3 new things that you see in red. We're going to add a gradient overlay. We're going to warp some text. We're going to use the Satin effect. We're going to use a clipping mask. We're going to add a stroke effect to the text. We're going to edit a smart object for the first time, and we're going to add a drop shadow. So over here in our template, you'll have 3 layers. These 2 are turned off. We're going to use them later in the tutorial, so just leave them there. All right, first up, the background layer. Double click it, and we're going to select the gradient overlay. You can't just turn it on. You also have to click here and make it dark gray. And yours is gonna look different than mine to start. It's gonna look like it's black and white. It's gonna have a black here and a white here. We're gonna click these little boxes and we're gonna change the colors. The first color you're gonna want is this green right here. If you wanna type in the number right here, it is 007500. You'll get the exact green that I have. And then you click OK. Then click on this button, which will be white for you. Double click it. And you can type in 005800, slightly darker than the original one, and then click OK. I want you to change from linear to radial. And then, why isn't it showing up? And then click OK. Now that's not going to show up actually until we do something to this layer. There needs to be pixels. So with whatever color you have selected, just grab the paint bucket tool and that should show up there. So if you've done it right, it should be slightly brighter in the center and slightly darker in the outside. Just very minimal, not a crazy gradient with a lot of change, just a very subtle one. All right, so next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go to our text tool and we are going to type the word luckiest guy. So I'm gonna make a pretty, not luckiest guy, using the font luckiest guy. We're gonna type in the word Riverside. If you don't have the font luckiest guy loaded, you won't. It's right here. You can just search for it. If you just type in luck, it will show up and you can select the luckiest guy font and there it will be. So we need to make this larger than what it is right now and we're maxed out. So I'm going to go to my character tools and I'm going to type in, I think it's probably going to be about 350 pixels should be about good for us here. 350 pixels, that looks all right to me. Click OK, and we've got the word Riverside typed out. Next up, we want to copy that layer. So I'm going to go over here to Riverside. I'm going to right click on the layer and duplicate the layer so that there are 2 of them. I'm going to move one to be directly underneath it. I'm going to keep it centered, double click it, and I'm going to write Ravens. And there we go. We got Riverside and Ravens ready to go. All right, so going back to the Riverside layer, this is where we're going to do something new. We're going to warp this layer. So with our text tool selected, we want to have Riverside. We want to go ahead and click this warp button up here. And there's different ways that we can warp chosen by the style. Right now there's no warping. We want an arc. There's different ones that you could play with, but we're going to work with arc today. Now that's way too much. It's at 50%. Leave these distortions at 0 and just bring it down to about 12%. And then click OK. Click the check mark and we're good to go with Riverside. Now we need to kind of put this more in the middle. So I'm going to move some of these down. I'm going to move Riverside a bit, and then I'm going to move Ravens down. So it's not quite touching Riverside, but right there. Make sure you get that red bar in the center to indicate that, yep, you hit the center perfectly. There you go. It looks good like that. All right, let's change the color of these words. Starting with Riverside, we're going to want that to be green. So I'm going to click on the character box. If it's not open, click here, and we're going to get a specific green. We want it to be 05800. So you can just go right here to this and type in 00005800. If you click on enter on that, you'll get the exact green that I'm using here, and then click OK. It's all right that it's kind of hiding into the background now. That's fine. Then select ravens, and we want pure white for ravens. So we're just going to click on the black box and hit pure white and OK. And we're good to go with ravens being white and Riverside being. Next, we're going to add the satin effect. To do that, we're going to click on both of our layers here. We're going to start with ravens, double click it, and the layer style comes up. We're going to click a check mark on the satin button, but we also need to select that layer, make it dark, and we're going to change its opacity. Yours is probably up higher to start. We're going to change the opacity to 20%. You can type it in there if you want. Everything else is good. Click OK. And then do the same for Riverside. Click on Satin, make your opacity 20%, and then you should be good. Click OK. And you can see it kind of makes like a fuzz with a whiter on the outside kind of effect. All right, now it's time to use these lines. So we're going to take our word lines layer and we're going to move it above ravens. We're going to turn it on and you'll see it just puts a bunch of lines in the way. Now we only want that to show on the word ravens. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and do the clipping mask. That will mask it to just the word ravens. Then I'm going to right click that layer and duplicate it. And I'm going to set that one so that it clips to Riverside. So you have word lines with this arrow clipping to the ravens layer, and you have word lines copy with the arrow clipping to the Riverside layer. And now you've got this effect with these stripes. So about those stripes, I don't want my stripes to be black. I want them to be kind of green and then white and gray. So on the, let's start with the word lines copy, the one that's attached to Riverside. Let's double click this one and we're going to select color overlay. Now I already have a color selected. Yours is probably going to be white or black by default or whatever it might be. So on color overlay, we're going to click this box right here. And what we are going to want is a green color. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to try to find it. It's 0660. So 006600 will be the exact green that I'm using. You can see it's real close right there. And there we go. We just got a light green, dark green, light green, dark green effect and click OK. And then for the word lines up here, I'm going to double click that and do the same thing. I'm going to select the color overlay. I don't want green in this case. I want gray. So I'm just going to go pick a gray. I got 5E, 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 and then select OK. And I'm good to go. I've got the stripes that I want on my words. All right, next up, we are going to combine all four of these layers as a smart object. Hold the CTRL, the control key on your keyboard, and make sure all four of these layers are selected in light gray. Once they're all selected, you can release control and right-click any one of the layers and convert it to a smart object. It should combine them all. Might take a second. It's called word lines right now, which I don't like, so I'm just going to write words so that it's more accurate as to what we do or what we're doing here. Now we're going to add some of the outline to these words. I'm going to double click this layer to get the layer styles, and we're going to add a stroke. So we're going to click on the stroke. Yours will probably be different. I think the default is usually black, and it's probably really small, something like that to start with. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a black stroke. So make sure this color is black. And we're going to put this stroke at about 44 pixels. I just know that that works. You could slide it around, but I'm going to put 44 pixels. That's what I want for this project. And then I'm good. Now we're going to add a second stroke. There's only one stroke off option here. So we're going to click this plus button right there, and it's going to add another stroke option. We're going to change this second stroke. Make sure you're on the second one here, the bottom one. We're going to change that one to white, which should be FFFFF all the way through. And we're going to make that one 56 pixels. So I'm just going to drag that up to be 56 pixels. And I'm good to go. Now I can click OK. I'm looking at this and I like the stripes on Riverside, but I don't like the stripes on Ravens. It's too too contrasty. There's too much of a difference in the stripes. I want to fix that. Here's something that you probably didn't know you could do. Pay attention right here. We only have one tab. When I click on this button right here, double click it, it's going to open up those 4 layers in a new tab that we use to make that smart object. So what we need to change is the word lines over the ravens. So I'm going to double click the word lines. I'm going to select my color overlay, and this gray right here is too dark. I'm going to make it much smaller. I'm going to try to find like E7, I think. Let's go with, I'm looking at the screen right there. There you go. Subtle, just like that. EB, EB, EB is what I ended up with. And then click OK, then click OK. Now to get this to work and have our document actually change, you just have to go to File and save the smart object. Now that this smart object is updated, we go back to our original document and it already changed those stripes for us and it looks good now. I'm happy with how it goes. All right, let's finish up a couple little effects here, and then we'll be good to go. Well, let's use these background lines now. Turn them on. Nothing's going to happen because it's under our background. Move it up so that the background is in between the words and the actual background. This background needs to be stretched, so I'm going to just not stretch it. Actually, I'm just resize it. I'm not holding shift. I'm just moving it up to the top here, moving it down till it hits the bottom there, and I'll click the check mark. As soon as you click the check mark, it should clean up. And similar to what we did in the background, I don't want black, green, black, green. I want it to be like this, green, light green, dark green. So let's double click the background lines and hit on the color overlay. Right now we have white selected, or whatever this color is. And I would like to fix that, and I'm going to make it 00440. These are just numbers that I found earlier that I liked, and I just wrote them down. So there they are, 0040. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to just make it a little bit, let's lower the opacity so you can kind of get some of that grady effect through it too. Probably about 60% looks good. The last thing I want to do is put a drop shadow on this Ravens logo. I'm going to double click the words. I'm going to hit up the drop shadow. And I'm going to use these settings that are already ready for me here because I put it in earlier. The blend mode should be normal. It starts with multiply. Make your opacity 100%. Make your distance of 14. Make your spread 100%. Make your size about 58 pixels. Everything else should be default. Then click OK. You're just going to get that little tiny bit of black underneath it. It's just slightly too large for me. So on that layer, I'm going to click the corner of the words layer, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller and then recenter it, making sure I hit the center in both directions now, or not both directions, just the center direction like that. And I'm happy to go. We are good. Our project looks great. Save Google Drive, export a JPEG, and you're done.